Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week, the one show where you don't have to worry about judging anything because we do it all for you. But Isabel Oakeshott's here, Howard Cox is here, Candice Holdsworth, haven't seen you for a while, welcome back, and Stephen Allen as well. I suppose you'd have to start at the top of the tree, wouldn't you, today? Sir Keir Starmer.
I mean, where do you begin with this guy? So what's really exciting me this week is his brutal repression of free speech, which is so sinister.
Yes.
I'm kind of feeling like plank is too nice a word for it, actually, but nonetheless, I don't want to weaken my own nomination.
Yeah.
So this is a week in which we have seen a number of people who have either been jailed or have been chucked into a police cell for up to 36 hours for the crime of posting messages on social media. Now, in some cases, those messages have been clearly pretty awful and designed to create unrest.
And pretty stupid
or worse,
as well.
Or worse, pretty stupid. But in other cases, they've only been stupid and not malign and not malicious. And nonetheless, those people have been treated as if they're terrorists. And it just is very, very concerning. The way that the police forces, and backed up by the government, have been putting out these finger-wagging statements saying, you know, if you're a keyboard warrior, you know, we've all got to take responsibility. We'll be coming for you. And they literally are using that kind of rhetoric. We're coming.
And this was
for
coming
you.
from Sir Mark Rowley, wasn't it, who was the head of the Metropolitan Police, saying he was even going to come after people in America, which everybody fell about laughing
I mean,
about.
this is like McCarthyism, only the pursuit of a different side. You know, Reds under the bed. In this case, it's far right thugs under the bed. And it just is the kind of repression that I don't think has any place in a proud, strong, modern democracy. And why is it happening? Because the government doesn't have any answers to the crisis, so the best thing they can do is shoot the messenger.
And try and stop people from rioting. I mean, you can see why they clamped down on the people that rioted, but as we all said at the time, how much further is this all going to go and where are they going to stop? Because nobody really knows. I mean, I don't know, for example, what they will consider to be incitement to riot. I don't know what would be considered to be hate crimes or non-crime crime, whatever the hell it is.
Well, the definition is one of the problems, Mike, isn't
nobody knows what you can say and what you can't say.
Well, what I've written in the last probably 15 months about Sadiq Khan, I should be a life sentence.
Well, don't worry, there's still time. They may still be coming for you.
We'll come and visit you, but I mean, we may all be with you. We'll all be with you.
I found that so sinister on Twitter, the gov.uk tweet. Think before you post. I've never seen anything like that, and I think it really does fit the definition of Orwellian. It really, really does.
Think before you post should only be applied to greetings cards with glitter.
Yes.
Don't send me one of those because you are making my life hell for about a fortnight.
No, don't worry, you can't send anything through the post anymore because it never gets there. You know.
But I think anything that demonstrably says let's go out and burn things down or let's go out and harm people, that, of course, there is a category for that.
But that's always been the case,
But a lot of
isn't
stuff is reasonable comment. And the problem with this type of repression is that people become very nervous about having a legitimate and important public interest debate. And I'll tell you what it is the government is desperate to cover up. That is any link being exposed between violent crime and immigration. They cannot handle that. They want it swept away. And this is why every time something awful happens, they're quick to say, well, this was a local person from, you know, wherever it was, when quite patently it almost certainly was not a local person. Unless you're stretching that definition to global.
The other interesting thing in reverse of that was that they talked about this sort of far right, you know, mobilised force of sort of thugs who were moving all around the country, rioting everywhere, and everywhere they turned up on trains and they were travelling together. And almost everyone, I think, to a man and woman who has been sent down and done jail time for this, they're all local. Not one of them is a sort of travelling far-right thug. These are all people who are concerned about their own communities and they've done something very, very stupid and criminal, and now they're paying the price for it. But what they weren't was some kind of, you know, well-organised mob.
And the thing that really unsettles me about all of this is the way they're being made an example of. Now, we could have a debate about whether politicians and governments are allowed to do that. You know, maybe there is a case for making an example of people in a certain very, very difficult situation. But it really sits badly with me that there are actual rapists, actual killers, actual serial drug dealers and, you know, those who have committed literally dozens of offences who are avoiding custodial sentences. And then you've got some poor, you know, middle-aged woman who, you know, in a bit of a hot temper, tweeted something stupid and it's being sent down for months or years.
It's incredible.
I thought we didn't have enough prison places.
Well, we have, because we've let some killers out in order to let them in.
Brilliant.
So that's great. But let's have a look at how you deal with Keir Starmer if he ever comes round and tries to do you for thought crimes.
That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Get out of my pub.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, look at his mask.
I know. Do you remember that?
God.
That was during the election campaign of, 2019, I suppose?
Yeah.
My goodness, that
Why
time
is he wearing
flies.
that stupid mask?
And he's wearing the stupid mask, and that guy just wasn't having it. And he was great. It was in Bath, I think that happened. And,
It's a Barbara Windsor comment. Well, get out of my pub.
He just needs the drums at the end.
It was absolutely. It would be great. Anyway, Howard, over to you.
Well,
I mean, you come in so rarely nowadays. I'm surprised that you haven't thought of another plank that you from Rose, but here we are again.
Well, my dear friend, he's been elected for a third term, and by 18% of Londoners, 82% didn't want him, but 18% got it, and he's doing all the usual things, all the promises and all the things. He's promising £12 million on more LTNs and cycle lanes and all those sorts of things. But this is the thing that's really incredible. He actually bought into saying building 3,000 affordable houses.
Yes.
He's only built 71.
Right.
2.3%.
71.
Yeah. 2.3% is what he's achieved. Now,
and he's always been very critical. He was always critical of the Tories for not building houses, but he hasn't done it either.
Well, why did the Tory government and why have the Labour government not jumped on him? And Lord Bailey, Sean Bailey, my good friend, he actually said that he should be put into special measures.
Yes. Well, that would be... I mean, I saw the other story this week that I can't remember the exact numbers, but under Boris Johnson, there was something like 10 senior members of the mayor's staff who were on sort of the top level of salary. Under Sadiq Khan, it's gone up to something like 75.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and he's got loads and loads of these people, not least the new climate czar that he's brought in from somewhere up north.
And the night czar, don't forget
and of
that.
course, the night czar, she was on Plank of the Week last week.
Yeah,
you know, Amy Lame, as
whatever
we call
her
her,
name is.
who's been off sick but able to still do her radio show on BBC Radio 6, even though she's off sick
But
from
there
the
are
job.
there are 1,000 employees under him that are earning six-figure salaries.
Yes. No, he's absolutely... And TfL's the same, isn't it? Also, you've got to give him the credit for managing the Metropolitan Police as well, let's not forget. Because only today, this was said about the Metropolitan Police. The force was assessed across 9 areas and graded as requires improvement or inadequate in 7 of them, including investigating and preventing crime.
Which is kind of their core offer.
Right. So apart from the fact that they can't do investigating and preventing crime very well, I don't know what the other 2 are that are OK. Presumably dancing about, you know, with Extinction Rebellion. Rainbow shoelaces, you know, painting rainbows on the police cars. You get full marks for that.
But the arrogance of the mayor, Mike, this is one of the things. At a mayoral question time, he was asked, I can't remember who it was, but I think it was one of the Tory Assembly members, asking, Mr. Mayor, have you got any flaws?
Yes.
And he just simply responded, no.
No. I'm sure he believes that.
He does believe it.
He's got 10 floors down the road in that building that he doesn't use.
Exactly.
They don't even use the building that was built specifically for the London Assembly.
Which was an icon for the capital as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, we've got a clip, you'll be pleased to know, of Sadiq Khan, and here he is showing his normal kind of, neutral side when addressing a crowd.
What I find unacceptable, though, is some of those who've got legitimate objections joining hands with some of those outside who are part of a far-right group who are... Let's call a spade a spade. Some of those outside are part of the far-right.
This was, you might remember, at Ealing Town Hall some months ago. It was probably a couple of years ago, maybe, actually. And there was a meeting at Ealing about you, Les, basically. And there were some people protesting outside who were, quite frankly, local people who didn't want to
Not far right.
They weren't a far right gang of thugs. I mean, they're sort of obsessed with this word, aren't they?
It is. It's just the easiest, laziest way of trying to smear and demean people. It is no different from saying the word racist. That is the level of it. And it is when they've got no other argument.
Yeah.
You know what I think is weird about Sadiq Khan? Is the extent to which he's sort of invisible, that actually this guy gets away with just taking his huge salary, failing and failing and failing and failing, and actually most of the time no one really troubles him, do they?
Well, when the Olympians came back to the airport last week, he was at front and centre.
He found himself in front of the picture, yeah.
What did he do? Did he get a gold medal?
No, I know, exactly right. And then I saw a couple of people responding to your tweet, which is probably another one that will put you in jail for a while. And basically they said, he was the Mayor of London when we had the Olympics in 2012. Well, he wasn't, was he?
No.
I mean, I don't think he had anything to do with
No,
the
I think
Olympics.
Boris. It was Boris.
Yeah, and London was once the host city, so that's why he's there. It's like, no, it's not.
12 years ago.
And also, look at the state of London. I mean, since he's been in charge, I mean, Boris Johnson may have had many failings. When Boris Johnson was mayor, London was a much brighter, funnier,
cheerful.
happier city.
Yeah.
It was the high
And it's
watermark
now
of
a city
optimism.
full of miserable, angry, nasty, violent people.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, you know, that's down to, it's got to be somehow down to Sadiq
People
Khan,
are
isn't it?
genuinely scared to walk the streets of London at night. I mean, my daughter's 30.
I tell my kids,
she won't go out.
I tell my kids who like to come up to the night, I say, you know, don't get your phone out on the street. You know,
Exactly.
go into a doorway if you're going to look at it.
Yeah.
You know, don't if you've got a nice watch, don't wear it.
I agree.
All of that stuff.
But this
you
is
know.
all pretty new.
We shouldn't be living
You know,
like
I never
this.
felt like this about London a few
No.
years ago. Pre-pandemic,
I would say,
like
yeah,
this.
I would say literally it's got this bad in the last year and a half.
Yeah, and also the random stabbings of children, which is just a whole next level. That's not just a one-off anymore. That seems to be periodically children are being stabbed on our streets.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Well, I mean, a guy got shot by the police the other day in Surrey, and it barely made the papers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Anyway, Candice, over to you. Thanet Council, we're going east.
Yes. So, Thanet Council, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that they will no longer tolerate what they deem to be foul or abusive language in public spaces.
Blimey.
And they said if people do that, they're going to be fined £100 if they say something which causes someone else distress. The obvious point for that is, what causes someone distress?
Right.
I mean, that is so subjective.
Yeah.
And the Free Speech Union has said, well, this is clearly not lawful, and how can they enforce this? And they've agreed to back anyone who falls afoul of this law. But for me, I think it just shows how many, and we've been discussing this, like institutions, corporations, they have no regard for free speech anymore.
No.
They just don't, and they kind of view it as problematic.
Yeah.
And I think organisations like the Free Speech Union are going to start becoming more and more important.
Yeah.
We're going to have to start being a lot more assertive about it, and we're going to have to start challenging the authorities on it, because I don't think we can guarantee that they will uphold it.
So is the aim of this to stop people just swearing and using really ugly language?
Well, they say that, but it's very vaguely defined. So it says foul or abusive language, which could cause distress. But I mean, someone could just be a bit leery, a bit boisterous, having a discussion.
We could be sitting in a pub or something, and I could be swearing, as I quite often do, not particularly at anybody, but just because that's the way I talk.
Yeah, how do you...
And somebody could come up and give me an on-the-spot fine.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I feel like I'm going to just be a bit of a devil's advocate here. I feel like there has been a kind of disintegration of, you know, polite standards on public transport, for example. So if you're travelling with children in particular, it is horrible to hear teenagers and young people shouting and swearing and using the most disgusting and often
Mike wouldn't
really
do that in front of children.
stuff.
No.
That's the point. It's in who the company
And of course,
you're with.
also, these are not the people that will be getting the spot fines, will they?
No.
Because, you know, it'll be the usual thing. If you've got wardens going around, you know, swear wardens going, you, I heard you just using the F word. You know, they're not going to go after the kid because the kid might have a knife, or the kid might punch him, or the kid might do something else. They'll go after people like me on the basis that I'll just go, you know, oh, OK then,
Yeah, it's a bit like whether or not you can get away with bursting through the tube barriers.
Yes.
Because only certain people can get away with that. It isn't
I
you
certainly
and me.
wouldn't. No,
This
I
is
certainly
like
wouldn't.
speed cameras. This is the cash cow, right?
Yeah.
Because this is in Thanet, and if you're in Thanet, you're swearing. Let's be honest, right? I used to live in Kent. You got to say some
Careful,
swear
I still
words.
do.
I know you still do. I thought I'd mention it. This is just making some money, isn't it? People who live there are bound to have some choice language.
They're always looking for new ways to make money now. I mean, there was another story this week. I think £35.8 billion was collected last year by local councils in council tax alone, right? And yet they're still all going bankrupt. So they still need ever more money to pay for the ever-dwindling services that we get.
And it's going to go up.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, they only collect bins like once every 3 months now.
Yeah.
So you're going to be swearing about that when you walk past it, and you pay another £100 for it. It's a money-making scheme.
Yeah, get in the bin.
I actually got a parking ticket the other day. And I came out, I popped in my little Cranbrook village town, you know, that sort of thing. And I came out, the guy was about to put a ticket. I said, oh, I went. And so, could he have actually done double the fine?
Probably. But it's like those signs that you see everywhere now. We will not tolerate any abuse.
I'm so bored of that. You know, I don't need to be told not to be abusive all the time. Let's have an assumption that we're all pretty civil.
It's like the one, there used to be one at the bottom of the escalators at London Bridge Station, which said, you know, it is, what was the phrase they used? It is illegal to touch somebody, to touch people, something like that. You know, like, well, I'm not going to put my hands on somebody I don't know.
But it's becoming normalised now to have that sort of finger wagging, that chiding. But the public is not to be trusted.
No.
It sets a horrible atmosphere, doesn't it? I mean, I had this yesterday morning. There I was, just got on the train, lovely Portsmouth Harbour, heading into London, and then you get a lecture from the tannoy at 9 in the morning saying, you know, anyone who abuses our staff will be handed to the British Transport. Well, hang on, I wasn't actually thinking of abusing your staff.
But now I am.
Just sitting here eating my cereal.
No one's going to see that sign and go, you know, I was just about to abuse the staff. But I saw a sign that said,
and so then I wasn't. Yes,
I love signs so much.
Exactly right. Now, we've got a little clip for you. This is from somebody who was in America, in Detroit to be precise, who was fined for swearing.
I was completely shocked. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Colin Anderson is paying his ticket for disorderly conduct for cursing after encountering a police officer.
As I was walking away, under my breath, and I'm like, you know what, this is
Anderson tried fighting his ticket in court, but lost.
I mean, that's what it's going to be like, isn't it? Unbelievable. Meanwhile, down the road, there's a couple of people being shot.
Yeah, but never mind that.
Never mind
nothing
that.
to see here.
Here's a ticket for swearing.
It shouldn't be £100 per swear. It should be like graded, like 20 quid for a P or a B word. Maybe if you could get up to, you know, the Fs are.
Well,
like
we could give them
quid.
the Ofcom guide. That was one of the most amusing things. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. There's an Ofcom guide to swearing, right? And I was once in the pub. And a few drinks had been had, and I just started reading it out because we were in a little group, you know, we weren't offending anybody, but the reading of the swear words is absolutely hilarious. It's got every single word under the sun that you can think of, and what happens if you say this one, you know, that's a bad one, but this one you could sort of go away with as long as it's after 9 o'clock at night. Really funny.
There's so much forgotten about, but then I read the list and was like, we used to say that at school. It's so good.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I heard somebody shouting in my street the other day a word. Poxy, I think I can say it, which I haven't heard for ages. Poxy.
I'm offended. I'm sorry.
Yeah. This was a woman.
That just means small.
No, it means crap, really, crappy.
Yeah.
But it was a woman who was shouting at her own children. I mean, that's the sort of people that live in my street, referring to them as poxy. Anyway, there was a few other bad words as well. Over to you, Steve.
Back
to the old Olympics.
The Olympics, yeah. I don't want to offend trans women because some are bigger than me. But previously at the Olympics, we had the controversy of two boxers who may have failed gender tests, and the Paralympics.
Well, who definitely did fail a gender test.
Well, the Paralympics thought, hold my beer. Yeah. We can do that even better. What we're dealing with now is officially a 50-year-old trans woman, Valentino Petrillo, who's in the running for the running. And only transitioned 5 years ago. So while we can talk about the benefits of going through a male puberty, Valentina went through a male midlife crisis.
Yes.
I mean, which often includes taking up running and spending time with younger women. So this actually still really fits.
Has he got a Porsche?
Previously, and the ponytail. Previously won titles in the men's T12.
Right.
Born with Stargardt disease and, you know, also testicles, which might get a mention. But now it's a tricky situation, isn't it? Because if Valentina wins, Harry Potter's real mum's going to throw some hate.
Yeah.
But if you lose, you lost to a girl. And I remember at school, that was the worst thing. And this person went to the school at the same time as I did.
Yes.
You know, 50.
It's quite unusual for a 50-year-old at all.
That's going to be short.
That's a bloke, for Christ's sake.
I don't think this is complicated at all.
No.
Just quite simply should be disqualified.
Yeah.
Well, the Athletics Federation, whatever they're called, disqualifies trans women.
If
So
he
it's
thinks
just
normal
the
girls do that, then he's got another.
But there's a misclassification. The IOC and versus the athletics group, they don't talk to each other, apparently, about what is a woman,
well, the Olympics
what is a man.
is full of the virtue signalling crowd, isn't it? I mean, I was not surprised at all to learn, I mentioned this, I think, last week, that the guy at the IOC who was talking the most about the boxing was apparently one of the best men at Keir Starmer's wedding.
Yes, of course.
That milieu.
Right.
Yes.
And he had, and I said this last week as well, 4 of them. He had 4 best men. I mean, who does that? I don't know of anyone who gets married.
He doesn't understand the word best.
No, he can't make. No, well, he can't make up his mind. You know, he's like, who's your best man?
No.
Those 4.
It's
you know.
flip-flopping again. Flip-flopping.
How did everyone have to listen to 4 speeches?
I presume so,
Each
yeah.
one
I
doing a
presume
different
so.
speech?
I mean, I can imagine anything
Maybe he
worse.
didn't want to offend any of his friends.
Maybe, yeah.
I think this enhances his qualifications for being Plank of the Week.
Yes,
by the way.
I think it
This
absolutely does.
revelation.
You're absolutely right. Very true. We've got lots more to do. Coming up in the next bit, we're going to be going up to Scotland. We're going to get back to the Labour Party, and we're going to visit the NHS in hospitals as well. This is Plank of the Week. More after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Time for me to give you my first plank today. And it's got to be, I'm afraid, the NHS, because they haven't been in for a while. But we were talking just there about trans men and running and jumping and you know, all sorts of other shot putting, all the rest of it. If you go into a hospital nowadays to get an X-ray, they have to ask you if you're pregnant, even if you're a bloke. And this is apparently now absolutely down the line. Nobody gets away with it, even if they look at it. James Whale always tells me this story that, when he goes to get his treatment, and he's always very, full of praise for the nurses and full of praise for the treatment that he's getting. And it's now a laugh. The nurses say to him every time, James, we have to ask you again. And he said, well, I wasn't pregnant last time. And they go, yeah, well, we have to ask you again if you are. And they still have to do it, even though they know, and everybody knows it's a joke. And some people were getting quite exercised about this, saying, why does it bother anyone? Those on the left who think it's completely normal. It's really annoying. Yeah, it's really annoying.
Because it's absurd and it's a waste of breath, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it also gives an insight, does it not, into how these people think. Because they're worried about upsetting somebody on a very, very, very slim chance that the person standing in front of them who looks like a man is actually a woman and might be carrying a child.
In that case, I'd say the onus is on that person to volunteer the facts.
Yes, to say, by the way, before you run the radiography over me, I should tell you that I'm pregnant.
And it discourages people from just being able to follow their instincts. I mean, I had something a few weeks ago where the doctor, I was sent for an X-ray, and he sent me with the wrong forms, which I didn't look at.
Right.
It was a man's name. So I handed it over to the secretary at radiography, and she was scrutinising me, she was looking at me, and she said, are you this person? And I said, no, that's the wrong form. And she's like, I'm so sorry, I thought maybe you might be transgender. Like, she couldn't ask me.
She apologised.
Yes, I swear. And she said to me, I couldn't just say, listen, he's given you the wrong forms. These are for a man.
Right.
She sort of had to sit there and think, what is the right thing for me to say? This is clearly a woman in front of me.
At least she checked before she gave you the prostate test, because you could have been there all day.
But this is the other problem, is they then create all sorts of ridiculous kind of, niceties around ordinary speech. Like, you can't talk to people in a normal way. You can't have a conversation in case you get something wrong.
Yeah.
The idea of offence, if someone says to me, when's it due? I think they're calling me fat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's what I'd take from this. Like, how do you think this is? Am I showing already?
Yeah.
So there's still got to be offence to be had.
I think so. I mean, they're actually creating offensiveness.
And how far is it going to go?
Because we're also being told that this might be offensive to some people who are particularly sensitive about the pregnancy word, because they've been trying to get pregnant for years and years and years, and it's never worked out for them. So when anybody asks them, they might burst into floods of tears.
I can testament to that, because we had trouble having children, and I adopted in the end, etc., quite late in life.
Right.
We had real problems with miscarriages galore and all that sort of thing. So it can be sensitive. My wife has taken a lot of abuse is the wrong word, but it's insensitivities that are being thrown at her. And so I can understand that. But for a bloke walking in like James Whale...
Yeah. I mean,
sorry.
Presumably the reason they're asking is because if you are pregnant, you shouldn't be going to the radiography department.
Yeah.
So why don't they just have a sign that says that?
Yeah.
But
if you're pregnant, don't come in here or something. I don't know.
The NHS is replete with this stuff. I mean, I've seen some of the guidance, for example, at the Brighton NHS Hospital Trust there, where it's all about chest feeding and basically,
Brighton's one of the leading lights in this area, isn't it?
Unfortunately, one of the leading darks, I would say.
Isabel, it's chest, it's not breastfeeding then?
No.
Chest feeding.
It sounds like something from a zombie movie,
Exactly.
I was thinking. It sounds like somebody's eating your chest, with a sort of ear hanging off or something. It doesn't sound normal at all. I had an X-ray done this week because I had my dental checkup, and they always wanted to do an X-ray. And all he did was give me a glass of water and asked me to take my jacket off. I feel a bit left out, to be honest. He didn't ask me anything.
And stood about 5 metres
Mind you,
away.
that cost me 40 quid, you know. But of course, that's what happens. Anyway, as you might expect, we've got a clip, which is what a pregnant man would look like.
I just can't wait to meet you, sweet child, you're on the way. I'm filled with expectation, and you're growing every day. Yeah, I just can't wait to meet you, and I know this much is true. The greatest part of me, my babe, will be living on in you.
I don't know where Chuck finds these, I don't even know what that is. I think it's an advert for some cereal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fibre. Isabel, over to you. Angela Rayner.
So Labour's crazy housing plans.
Yes.
They're going to build thousands and thousands of new homes, and the question is who's going to be given these new homes? Who's prioritised in the grand housing list?
Yes.
And the Tories had what seems to, I think, most people, a pretty reasonable proposal.
Yeah.
That if you have a strong UK connection, i.e. you're actually British, or you've lived here for at least 10 years and paid into things and made a contribution, then actually you should be prioritised over people who've actually broken into this country illegally.
Yes.
Because that is what you're doing if
Seems
you come
sensible.
over in a boat.
Yeah.
Labour, in their infinite wisdom, are going to drop this. And they're taking it so far that they're not even ruling out, if you've got a conviction for terrorism, that doesn't rule you out for being on the social housing list. So we're in a situation now
it probably
where
prioritises
convicted criminals may be ahead of people who have, from overseas, by the way, may be ahead of people who have been here all their lives and paid into the system and, you know, have done some kind of positive thing for society rather than just come in here. I just find this stuff absolutely staggering.
I know. Well, some of the stuff...
How's that a vote winner?
I know. Well, it kind of isn't really, is it? I mean, that's the trouble. A lot of the stuff that's happening now, we didn't really know they were going to do. And people did warn us about it, but, you know, a lot of people didn't listen. And the trouble is, you know, housing, obviously a speciality for Angela Rayner, having had the two houses at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I remember being shocked and stunned when we found out, I think this was back in sort of early part of this year, that the former leader of Hamas is living in Colindale in a house that he got through the council. I mean, and he's still there.
What the hell?
And you kind of go, sorry?
I mean, I don't know. I'd like to be presented with evidence that lots of other countries do this, because I strongly suspect that the vast majority of countries in the world say, if you want any kind of subsidised housing, you have to be a citizen of this country.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, if I wanted to just mosey on over to, I don't know, Pakistan or something, you know, it's always
demanding a free house.
It's always quite surprising, actually, even in the poorest countries or poorer countries in the world, how tough they are on immigration.
Yeah.
So they're always worried that you might be coming over there for, you know, to try and get a job in some strange world in which you might be better off over there. Imagine if I went over there and said, I think, can I just have a free house, please? Would you mind putting me on the list?
Right.
You know, you're just going to be told.
I know. Unbelievable.
They always say keep your friends close and your enemies closer, so Colindale's quite close.
It is quite close.
And maybe that's why they thought...
It's on the northern line.
Yeah, it's handy, isn't it?
It is handy, yeah.
But the idea that if they prioritise criminals, the good news is you can become a criminal by sending a tweet.
Yes.
So,
so you might get up the housing ladder that way, you mean?
Yeah,
It's a very good thought.
True.
Let's have a look at Angela Rayner when she was on Question Time.
I'm not saying and I'm not suggesting we ignore the vote. The vote is quite clear. But as a Member of Parliament, I have a responsibility for British jobs, British workers, and for our public service, and to support that. So you need clarity.
Your job is to represent the public, the people who elect you. Start doing your job. If you don't like it, clear off. Simple as that.
God, I don't know how he got into Question Time. I mean, normally he wouldn't be allowed.
He's probably in prison now.
Yeah, he probably is. Yeah, never been seen again.
But she said British jobs for British workers, didn't she?
She did.
So what happened?
I know.
Well,
let's not forget. You've changed. Yeah, when they said change, what we didn't know they meant was actually change themselves from the chameleons that they were before the election. Because let's not forget, Keir Starmer is actually quoted. There's a clip that we've played before of him having a go at Rishi Sunak because he's threatening to take away the winter fuel allowance to pensioners, and you know, and sort of wagging his finger at him, saying, "Are you actually considering doing this horrendous thing?"
Freezing
and now they've done it.
They're going to become very unpopular, I think.
I think they already have. They already have. I mean, people have been saying to me, you know, it took the Tories 14 years to become as unpopular as this. This mob have done it in about 4 weeks.
It's the most disastrous start.
It really is.
New government
and I've also seen, as you know, where I come from, the Fairfield UK, you know, fighting on behalf of motorists. I've seen an email in the Treasury already. Fuel duties going up in the budget by 10 pence per litre, which is equivalent to about £5.50 per average family car.
Yeah. I see they're also punting on putting some road charges.
Pay per mile
is going to come in as well.
That's all coming, and they're not. And Pump Watch, they're still allowing people to be actually fleeced at the pumps. Watch this space.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Howard, it's down to you.
Well, we've been talking a
lot
about
the former First Minister of Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about prison and, you know, and all the things that you know, you should be. If you're a naughty person, you go to prison. I understand that when you go to prison, isn't that a punishment?
It's meant to be.
Yeah.
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, but
see, Labour used to say it wasn't a punishment. It was actually a really, really bad idea. But now that they're locking loads of people up, they think it's a punishment again. So again, we're all a bit confused.
He's all over the place on this, Keir.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the first few days of his premiership, he said too many people were going to prison. So what's going on? Now he wants more.
Well, Humza Yousaf, during the lockdown, during the pandemic, apparently spent £6 million in giving free mobile phones to prisoners.
What?
Yes, and guess what? They actually had enough money, and they bought enough to actually give every prisoner 2. phones.
Oh, good. So you can have a burner phone as well, because you always need one of those in prison to order the drugs.
I might defer to my learned colleague down there, because he wrote a great article on this recently. But you know what happened? Guess what? There's more crime committed as a result of they had access.
Why are you giving phones to prisoners?
These
exactly.
absolute muppets.
I mean,
in his defence, though, how could he know that people who were in prison for committing crimes would go on to commit crimes? There was no clue. How
there's
could he
no
know
way
this
that he could have known that.
No.
I mean, also, everybody knows the only reason you have a phone in prison is twofold: either to intimidate witnesses so that you can ring them up and tell them you're going to kill them if they, you know,
or do some drugs,
or order some drugs, or communicate with people on the outside about some criminal activity that you're going to do on the inside, or order some stuff. That you can't afford to pay for.
Apparently the SIM card actually was doctored, so they couldn't do much with it. But guess what? People were bringing them proper SIM cards in, putting it into the phone. And there was apparently, they actually detected, I think they actually associated 8,000 breaches, criminal breaches, that took place because of those phones.
Of course.
And it ruins the classic thing about getting a phone in prison was all about smuggling it, you know, in nature's pocket.
Yeah.
And if it's just a SIM card there, that's not even a fun story anymore. If it's a, you know, a Nokia 8210.
It's taking a lot of the fun away.
That's worse than the prostate examination.
It is. The problem is the charger. 3-pin plug. We live in the wrong country.
I mean, down in Wandsworth Prison, of course, they've got different forms of entertainment, haven't they? You don't need a phone for that. But we've got... the other thing we should remember about Humza Yousaf is that this week he also, rather unwisely in my view, decided to take on Elon Musk and said, I'm going to sue him. And don't you think he called him a race baiter, didn't he? Which is pretty good coming from him.
Wow.
You know.
Well, he's become my hero.
And Elon Musk just absolutely eviscerated him on Twitter. And I think he called him a scumbag at one point. But it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, imagine suing Elon Musk because of something he said on Twitter. How stupid do you have to be?
Well, he's very stupid.
He is very stupid. Oh, however, he does have one skill, and let's have a look at what it is.
It's got to be
that.
Yes, I remember this.
And yes, he falls over.
This is so funny.
I'm sorry, it never fails to make me just guffaw with laughter. We better have another look, Chuck, I think, hadn't we? Because it's the way he falls forward somehow.
It's so dramatic.
Yeah.
The way the guy
I've noticed it before, the kid with the crutches, predicting what's going to happen. He's going to need these.
How does he even do that? It's quite hard to fall
quite hard to do.
On a three-wheeler as well.
I think the circumstances were that he had an injury to one of his legs, so that's what he was given. But then, because he thought he would be sort of clever about it, he got a photographer posted at the end of a corridor because he wanted to make himself look like, you know, as if he was the master of time, space and dimension. And then he fell off it. So, you know.
I think we can finish the show now. He's won already.
Yeah, exactly.
On the basis of that clip alone.
I mean, just extraordinary stuff. Well, anyway, listen, we're more than halfway through. Coming up, we've got another one of mine, which I think you'll like. And we've got Age UK, who hasn't been on for a while, I don't think. And that'll be interesting. This is Plank of the Week. We'll be back after this. So, Candice, over to you. I mean, Elon Musk just got a mention, so I guess Facebook had to get one as well.
Yes, so it's Facebook. I've nominated them before, kind of for the same reasons. In the last week, Richard Dawkins, who's quite famous, the evolutionary biologist, had his Facebook deleted for no reason, and he wasn't sure why. He speculated it could be because he'd been commenting on this rather controversial boxer in the Olympics, the Algerian boxer. And he is, of course, he's a big believer, and I don't think he needs to even believe in it. It's evidently true in the sex binary. We don't know for sure if that's the case, but also it's because Facebook doesn't say. I mean, they can just delete your account with absolutely no explanation whatsoever, even deleting the accounts of someone who would be considered an expert on this topic.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's either bot censorship or it's these corporations which just have no respect for free expression or free discourse. I mean, one person could launch a complaint and that's it. They'll just delete your account. They'll be as risk averse as possible. No one will explain anything to you. And it's so funny, you know, we think that we live in enlightened times, but we don't necessarily. You know, you look back in history and you think how backward people were, not knowing, like, for instance, that the Earth revolved around the sun.
Right.
But we're in a period now where people deny the reality of biological sex.
Right. Well, I've been listening to, obviously, a lot of what the talk output is during the course of the week, and Julie Hartley-Brewer's been talking about going back to Keir Starmer and, you know, misinformation and this kind of campaign they've now got about misinformation. It's like, well, some of the biggest misinformation campaigns have been run by the government.
Yes.
Either previous Tory governments under COVID, you know, when they told us all to wear masks, and otherwise, you know, we'd kill people. You know, go back to, you know, make sure you don't go to school because you'll kill people. You know, the same people who now tell us that, you know, a woman can have a penis. You know, all this sort of supposed misinformation.
But the biggest
they could all be done for this.
The biggest con, of course, is still net zero. Heading towards that fantasy and what's happening in terms of climate change. I'm called a climate change denier all the time. I wear it with a badge of honour now.
Yeah, absolutely. It is incredible. And I mean, Facebook is a very faceless organisation, strangely enough, isn't it? You can't ever find anybody to talk to. If you do have a question. I mean, I've had things in the past, I've had sort of show pages and stuff like that disappear completely, and you can't ever, there isn't even anyone you can send an email to.
Nick Clegg, can't you?
Yeah, but I don't want to talk to Nick Clegg. I mean, you know, I could go after him, I suppose, but you know, it's a very odd organisation altogether, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you know, now we've got someone in charge of Twitter who's got an explicit commitment to free speech, but what's going on with Facebook? We still don't know. Most of the time, I think it's bots. I mean, it's just bot censorship. It's just like someone complains and then the page gets deleted and then maybe afterwards you'll get to put your case forward. But as we become more increasingly reliant on these platforms, it's more and more of an issue. And we actually have to enforce this. We actually have to say, what is your commitment to free expression?
I know this isn't the biggest issue here, but there's an irony that really bothers me, that Facebook must make millions from memes. And who's the person who invented memes? It's Dawkins. He came up with this meme theory. It's like the replicatable.
I didn't know that.
It's a good point.
Like the thought version of a gene. That's where it comes from. So he invents this word. They make tons of it and go, actually, let's get rid of this guy. Boom.
Bang. Off you go. Wow. And also, people tell me that it's really, really difficult to leave Facebook. It's like the mafia. You know, you go, all right, I'm thinking of closing my account. Are you sure? Do you really want to close your account? I'll tell you what, we'll put it on cold sort of ice for 3 months and then we'll come back to you. And then they bombard you with emails and say, you know, welcome back to Facebook. We're glad you're still here. And all of this, apparently you can sort of never shake them off.
Wow.
Well, now we know how to do it. If you want to leave Facebook, just say something about that boxer. Yeah. You're gone.
You're gone. That's a very good thought. Absolutely right. I mean, incredible stuff. And remember when Mark Zuckerberg appeared in front of the committee in Washington, D.C., and he was being questioned about, I think it was Instagram, which is one of their other little outfits that they do. And he was being quizzed by a senator on how Facebook came up with their rules, and it was all about child pornography. And it said, you know, basically, apparently on Instagram, if you are about to enter a place where there's a bit of child pornography, it warns you that it might be child pornography. But it doesn't stop you going there, right? And so he was being asked, well, how is it that... you know, that is possible. How is it possible for people who might be underage to still be able to access
the fact they recognise
that kind of material after you've been told that it might be there? And he goes, well, in case we might be wrong.
Brilliant.
And everyone's going, sorry, what? You can't tell what it is? It's a very weird and strange world. Anyway,
could be Jimmy Cranky. I think that's part of the risk, isn't it?
Yes.
Turns out not actual schoolboy.
No, indeed. Shocking. Steve Allen with Age UK. This could get you banned.
Yeah, Age UK found guilty of age discrimination. Already that's good, isn't it? That's like the RSPCA just kicking a badger.
It is.
It's right out the traps. This is going on. This is Alexander Kubin, who applied for a job with them as a brand asset manager and has very much ruined the brand for them after this story came out. They turned him down for an interview, and he should have been entitled to one because he was disabled by reason of mental issues, and they'd signed up to this code of conduct, which means in that case he should have got an interview straight away.
Right.
So they sent him just a generic letter saying you don't get an interview. He complained, and instead of saying sorry, admin error, they doubled down, gave him a massive list, like a review of his CV as to why he wouldn't have got.
Oh, really?
Why? It's not as though he's going to, change and learn stuff. He can't teach an old dog. Actually, he'll sue me. I won't finish that. But so they doubled down on it, and then so that they wouldn't be accused of ageism, they said that we gave the job to a 55-year-old. Apart from when you check, it was someone in their 30s. So there's another court case, because imagine being in your 30s and Age UK says you look like you're 55.
Is that sex discrimination because it's a woman and
probably
she's
could
like, how dare you?
Yeah, and they had to pay £4,000, which isn't a lot of money in compensation, really, but they're used to dealing with a generation of people who put fivers in birthday cards.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so for them, that's
true.
Quite a lot.
10p postal order I used to get from my grandmother. I mean, the funny thing about these organisations is they sort of hidebound themselves, haven't they? Because they've come up with all these rules.
They end up eating themselves.
Yeah, and then they end up not following their own rules and they end up getting sort of screwed over because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, which nobody cared if they'd done in the first place.
Yeah, they could have made this. They just sent a letter going admin error, but you can't see the job's then been filled. That would have been the end of it.
I mean, I suppose these organisations are quite exposed to people just playing a trick on them. So, for example, a 99-year-old might apply for the job just to see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, that is it. You make that your
because they're just sitting around at home thinking up pranks because they're going, I'm 99, nobody talks to me anymore. You know.
That's what we'll be like.
That's what we're. I don't think I'm going to reach 99. I don't think so. But it is it's a ridiculous state of affairs, isn't it? And the one lot of people that are winning in all of these particular cases is the lawyers, because the lawyers probably got if the £4,000 was paid out in compensation, the lawyers probably took about £3,500 and gave him 500 and said, "Yeah, thanks very much, off you go."
I mean, the whole age discrimination thing. Anyway, I'm going to be really controversial here and say some people of some ages are better at jobs than others. I mean, really. It's true. I don't necessarily want to consider someone who's a teenager in the same bracket as someone who's really experienced.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, Isabel, you're giving me some ideas here just now about that. I'm 70, so I'm the oldest one here. Yeah, careful. So there's a thought. I could actually apply Age UK. Well, how much was the salary?
Yeah, I don't know, actually.
Pension?
Well, surely they don't need to worry about that.
Do you think an 18-year-old could apply for the job? What would be their attitude to that?
Well, also, I mean,
patently ridiculous.
It would be ridiculous.
You can't reject on age.
No, you can't. But
I'm just demonstrating why that is a bit of a ridiculous rule.
Yeah.
You just have to come up with some other excuse.
You could make some money this way, though, Howard. I mean, you just apply for a load of jobs, get turned down for them.
We could split
2 or 3 of them.
You get
almost certainly they'd be paying you out. It's a bit like insurance nowadays, where if somebody makes a claim on insurance, they don't bother investigating. They just pay them out because it's cheaper than investigating.
And then pay everybody else's premiums up.
Yeah, exactly. Shocking. Anyway, we've got a little clip. What would happen if old people never retired, it says here.
Day, me say day, me say day, me say day. I wanna go home. Day, me say day, me say day, me say day. I wanna go home. Just got a job as a lifeguard in Savannah. I'm 85 and I wanna go home.
Love it.
That's quite funny, actually, isn't it? But there's no reason why people have to retire. But
so there's a guy that works for my neighbour, building fences.
Right.
He is so fit. I had no idea he's 83.
Wow.
And he says, I've got more work than I know how to hands on. I tell you what, that guy in his 80s does a hard day's graft.
Right.
I had 2 blokes who were repairing something on my property and they dossed around like time was of no object whatsoever.
Oh, I hate that.
They absolutely...
And he'll give you a quality job as well.
He was absolutely putting those young blokes to shame.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, look at Mick Jagger. He's the same age as Joe Biden. And you go, well, that's an interesting combination, isn't it? Because
one's having a lot more fun than the other, I think.
Yeah,
and knows how to as well.
Yeah, unbelievably, Joe Biden hasn't made it onto the show this week. But coming up, we're going to be doing the final part of the show, in which, of course, I decide who's going to win. And also, I'm going to be giving it to some lefties that haven't ever been on Plank of the Week before. But I'm really, really getting wound up by them because I wish they'd stop doing whatever it is that they're doing. This is Plank of the Week. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're very nearly at the end, and it's one more nomination from me. And I'm delighted to say, because I've actually been meaning to give these guys a kicking for a while, led by donkeys. One of the most ludicrous and ridiculous organisations I think anybody's ever seen. They're the darlings of people like James O'Brien and Carol Vorderman, who think that everything they do is brilliant, right?
Hilarious.
Now, of course, ever since the Tories have not been any longer the government, they've been a bit sort of clueless. They haven't known what to do, because they can't attack the Labour government, can they? I mean, they couldn't possibly go after, Rachel Reeves for taking money off old people. They couldn't possibly tell Keir Starmer that he was, a sort of flip-flopping, two-faced hypocrite. They couldn't do any of that. So instead, this week, they decided to go after Liz Truss. Now, whatever you may think of Liz Truss, and I quite like Liz Truss. I don't think she's ever done any harm to anybody. She's quite a pleasant individual. She's not horrible. She didn't really get a chance to do her job. Everybody makes fun of her. Some people say she should disappear off the political scene, but why should she?
Why?
She's a former Prime Minister. She's a senior member of the cabinet for years and years and years and years. But this week, I think she was either promoting a book or something. I think she was. Somewhere up in, was it Norfolk?
Sussex.
Sussex, was it? Anyway, well, here is Liz Truss being interviewed about her book.
So I think
as she's talking there, you can see there's a banner coming down.
Will probably win.
And the banner hilariously talks about, I crashed the economy. And it's like, she gets up, quite rightly, says it's not funny, which she's also been castigated for, by the way.
She didn't storm off.
No.
She actually, quietly and with considerable dignity, got up and walked out. And I absolutely do not blame her. I thought that was a disgraceful thing that they did there. That isn't funny. That is bullying. It's now nearly 2 years since she left office.
Yeah.
And is it never going to end for her? Is she going to be pilloried, mocked, ridiculed, publicly humiliated forevermore? This whole thing about she crashed the economy. She actually didn't crash the economy. She didn't have the means to crash the economy. Virtually nothing that was in her budget actually
the Bank of
took
England
place
did a good job of
anyway.
that.
So let's just put away the whole thing, she crashed the economy. Even if she did crash the economy, what right have these absolute muppets led by donkeys got to continue behaving like that? Not one of them has a public profile that they would dare. What did they do? Where is their sacrifice for the public good? Liz Truss held the highest office in this land, and if you may not care to like her, you may not agree with her politics, but I think she deserves some respect for that.
Yeah, I think she absolutely does. And led by donkeys, it will come as no surprise to you, is 4 white blokes who didn't like the idea that we were leaving the European Union. That was how it all started. We'll get back to that in a minute. But they also did Nigel Farage relatively recently, didn't they? That was awful as well. Where they had this sort of Putin face coming down behind him. And again, you know, there are security concerns around some of this stuff as well, because, you know, Liz Truss has a permanent security detail, having once been the Prime Minister, which will travel with her, which presumably they'll be armed. Nigel Farage now has to have, you know, increased security because of some of the nonsense that's been said about him and some of the vile stuff that appears on Twitter. You know, so they're actually, you know, technically threatening some people by doing this, you know?
It's so cheap and unimaginative as
really
well.
awful.
You know, the lettuce joke, great. It was funny at the time. It reminded us all that the Daily Star still exists.
Yeah.
Acres of free publicity for a failing tabloid, all of that. But it's 2 years on, guys. You know, maybe move on to some new targets.
Yeah. I mean,
it was just a random chance that she'd just said, is the economy stupid? Or did they sit there praying that she'd use that phrase? I suppose every politician does in an interview. But they must have been like, getting the sweats on. She might not say this, but
right. Well, I mean, amazingly, since this happened, actually, there's been some great pieces written. Brendan O'Neill has written a most fantastic piece.
It was great.
In which he says, led by donkeys have got to be the lamest, least funny members of the entire, I'm not sure if I can say this, wankerati.
Was that on the list? You know, your list.
You know, I don't think it was. It is without the ATI
so
at the end.
Maybe if you can just make up.
Apparently I can say it, so I'll say it again. Because this is true. Led by donkeys have got to be the lamest, least funny members of the entire wankerati, founded in 2019 in a hip pub in Stoke Newington by 4 white men called Will, Ben, James and Oliver,
of course,
who love to sup at Camden Hells. I wish I was making this up. Led by donkeys is an anti-Tory, Brexit-hating stunt group. They do what they think are witty Tory-bashing projections onto big buildings and billboards in order that people called Barnaby might have something to titter at as they cycle to work.
And that's it.
I mean, just brilliant.
That's exactly it.
That's them in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Maybe all they can do is make fun in a not particularly clever way.
It's negative, isn't it?
Of what they think are horrendous right-wing politics.
Yes.
You know?
They're one note, and I think people have recognised the line as well between, you know, using humour and all these things are really important in political discourse, but this is just like trying to humiliate.
It's schoolboy stuff
bullying.
as well.
It's actually
and
bullying.
bullying is absolutely right. I'm sorry to keep quoting for this, but this is so good. They're loved by the kind of people who quote tweet Marina Hyde articles with the word howling and who have never let one single St George's Day pass without saying he was Turkish, you know, which is absolutely what they all do, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, they hate everything about Britain, love everything about Europe. Even though, and can't understand why people who did vote Brexit actually quite like Europe as well, and quite often go on holiday. It's sort of people that say, "Oh, what are you doing in Italy? I thought you were Brexiteer." You know, these kind of morons who literally have no clue about how ordinary people think or how ordinary people live.
And as I said many times before, you can't debate with the left.
You can't.
No, you can't discuss it and everything. It's always attack.
Yeah.
And to be fair to Liz Truss, I think her advisor should have advised her not to turn up anyway.
Yeah.
But she was promoting her own book.
That's a good
point, yeah.
And also Liz Truss, I mean, because of the way that she has been treated, I mean, many people less perhaps strong than her would have given up.
Yeah.
They would have just gone, you know what, I can't be bothered with all this.
I don't know how she does it. I really don't. I mean, it takes resilience to a whole new level, doesn't it? She's really tried to style it out. She thinks she can keep going. I saw her shortly after the election at a party.
Yeah.
And there were loads of other MPs that had just lost their seats there, and they were all quite open about how shocked they were, like how traumatised. She was just like, yeah, I'm all right, you know, carrying on. She's really tough, but I just don't think that means she should go on having to take it.
No, I don't think so. But this particular type of, I mean, and as people were pointing out, you know, haven't Led by Donkey's got something to be critical of the Labour Party?
Yeah, it's
and
not
the
like
Labour
there's a shortage of material, is there?
You know, it's not as if they couldn't, you know, be projecting something onto the Houses of Parliament, making fun of, you know, Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves, you know?
Never. They never would.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. The centrist dads with the Metropolitan Echo Chamber do occasionally venture into Left Behind Britain to put up posters essentially telling the plebs there what dumb idiots they are. And that's kind of there is this kind of sense of what's called, I don't know, metropolitan elitism, you know, where they're so smug, they think they're right about everything. They can't believe that, you know, the plebs are able to actually vote things in that they didn't ask for.
I think you can say wankerati again. It's worth a £100 fine every time you do it, I'd say. I'll chip in for another.
Yeah, even Chuck says that may have been one too many. I think we need to pick a winner, and I think there's only one winner this week, it has to be said, don't you think? I mean, it's got to be the Prime Minister, hasn't it? I mean, Keir Starmer hasn't been made Plank of the Week since he's been in, unbelievably.
Oh, then he needs.
And so I think after now, what is this, week 5 or 6?
It's going to be first of many.
It feels like an eternity.
He came in on Independence Day, July the 4th, right? Or the day after. It's now well into August. I think it might be into week 6. So Plank of the Week is a well-deserved accolade. So well done. So Keir Starlin, as he was named by Alex Phillips. Plank of the Week. There's the noise. Thank you very much indeed to Isabel. Thank you to Howard. Thank you to Candice. Thank you to Steve. We'll be back at the same time next week for more plankery.